Peace and love, YouTube, and welcome to Bamboo Tuts. This is my very first tutorial, and hopefully everything goes well, guys. I always wanted to start a channel, and I'm finally doing it. But enough of all that, let's jump straight into it. This is what we're going to be creating, guys. Alright, let's get started, guys. Let's create a new composition. 1080p, 10 seconds should be fine. Create a new background. Let's call it BG. Now let's create our circle using the shape tool. Click and drag while holding Control Alt and Shift for a perfect circle. And around there should be fine. Control Alt and Home to center the anchor point and center it to the composition. Cool. Now let's animate this bad boy. First, let's separate the dimensions of X and Y, and let's focus on the Y. Add a keyframe, jump 10 frames, move it up, select the first keyframe, Control C, jump 10 frames, Control V, and there's our bouncing ball right there, but it's not bouncing at the moment. Let's fix that by selecting the middle keyframe, go to the speed editor and select the convert vertex tool. Select the keyframe, click and drag while holding shift, guys, just to get a nice looking V, and that should be fine. That's really looking a whole lot better. This is looking good. Now we need to get this to loop, and the best way to do it is to use expressions. Now expressions aren't really beginner friendly, but you should be easy to follow along. I'll click the Y position, type in loop out, add parentheses, click out, and that should loop for the entire timeline. It saves you a lot of keyframes. Cool. Now it's time for our text. Let's start with thank. Control Alt to center the anchor point, center it to the composition, align it just below the circle. Cool. And let's pre-compose this layer because we need duplicates. Keeping it to thank should be fine. Now let's start animating this with the position. Add a keyframe, jump 10 frames, and slightly move it down. Copy the first keyframe, jump 10 frames, and Control V to paste in. There we go. But we need to tweak these keyframes a little bit. Let's select everything, go to speed editor, but before that we need to ease these keyframes. Press F9, go to the speed editor, select the middle keyframe, drag it to the right and to the left to get a nice V shape again, and that should be looking a whole lot better. Let's see. Cool. Now I'm gonna double click into the layer so that we can trim it, because we don't need all that extra timeline. We want to keep things as neat as possible. There you go. Cool. Now let's start duplicating these groups and renaming them. This will be U. The third one will be 4. And if you can guess the last one, watching. Cool. Let's drag all three into the timeline, spread them across. Let's make sure that it reads right. Okay. Now let's double click into the layer and change the text layer to U. Control Alt to center the anchor point. Center it to the composition. Go back to the comp. It's changed. Cool. Let's do the same for the others. Center to the comp. Go back. Change the last one to watching. Center it. Go back to the comp. And now it reads well. Let's copy the keyframes from the first word and we're gonna paste them across. Press U to reveal the keyframes. Nice. Let's move it forward for a smoother transition. That's looking good. Let's do the same for the others. Okay. Let's press N just to clip our timeline to where we need it. Cool, that's looking good. But just to make it a bit more smoother with the text, I'm gonna clip the last frame just to smoothen everything out a bit more. There we go. Okay, now let's add some shapes for the different transitions of the background. Let's use the same circle. Center it, there we go. Move it below, just above the background. Change the color to whatever you like. Maybe like a bright orange will be fine. Cool. And then let's start animating this. Add a keyframe to the scale. Let's start on 0, go to the end, and let's scale it all the way up. All the way up. Cool. But it needs some easing a little bit. Yeah, it does. Let's select everything. Press F9, go to the speed editor, drag the last keyframe. There we go. And now we need to trim this layer just to get what we need. Cool. It's looking good. Let's just change the colors so we can see better. Duplicate that layer, move it across, change the color, maybe a nice bluish Aquaman color. Alright, cool. Cool. I love how this is looking. Let's move it slightly forward for a smoother transition. I like that better. Let's duplicate the layer, move it forward, and then we can change the colors. Maybe a nice purple, maybe bright purple. That's the Thanos color. And then maybe a bright green or teal for the last one. That's looking good. Let's stretch the keyframe out. Cool. I love how this is looking. Now let's add some motion blur and see how it'll look. Motion blur always works for me, guys. Let's do the same for the text layers and the shape layers we just made. Cool. Yep, it's working. Okay. Now let's add some squash and stretch into the ball. Right now it's looking really flat. I think we need some squash and stretch. Squash and stretch is very important for animation, guys. It just looks really good. Let's press U to reveal our keyframes, S for scale. But before that, we need to unlink the X and Y properties so that we only affect the X position. Let's add a keyframe. Jump about 6 frames or 5 frames. Squeeze it in a little bit. Copy the first keyframe. Go to the end, paste it in. And that should be looking a whole lot better. Yes. It's looking good. Now we need to loop these keyframes like we did for the Y position. I'll click the stopwatch, type loop out, parentheses. And that should look a whole lot better. Yes. Now we can just add a bit of a drag to the ball. I like using the echo effect. It's a really powerful effect, guys. You should check it out. And by default, this is how it looks. It's looking like a spirit bomb right now. But I like using the maximum blending mode because now it looks like a bit of a drag. And it's looking really nice, guys. Cool. You can add more copies just to increase the drag, but I just found it looks a bit weird, so I just kept it to 1. Looks a whole lot better. Cool. Now we can add some shadows, but before that we need to pre-compose a few layers, mainly the bouncing ball and the text layers. So we select the bouncing ball and the text layers, layer, pre-compose. Cool. Okay, duplicate the layer. Let's add a fill and drag it to the bottom. Select black or any other color you like. Shift the position a little bit just to offset it. And decrease the opacity to around 23 or 25. I think 23 is fine. And let's add a scale wipe just to make it a bit more dynamic. Scale wipe is also a powerful tool, but I'll show you cool stuff in the future. So we can just bend it out a little bit so it's casting a longer shadow. Yeah, that's cool. And let's add our last set of shadows. Duplicate the same layer and just offset it. Press S for scale to scale it all the way up. I think that should be cool, but you can place it whatever you like, guys. Do whatever you like. That's looking pretty cool. Nice. Now instead of a bouncing ball, you can bounce a star. That should look pretty interesting. And you know, just add your own flavor to this, guys. And we've reached the end of our video, guys. Thank you for watching. If you gain any insight, please share and like, because more content is on the way. I appreciate your time, and remember, don't rush your greatness. Peace and love, guys. Cheers.